Welcome to the Fertility Mind podcast. I am your host, Jessica Friesen, a certified fertility mindset coach, a sound healer, and an international best-selling author. My mission for this podcast is to give you weekly episodes where you hear my own success with IVF and how mindset and manifestation changed it all for me. You will also hear from my guests who share their success stories in the fertility world. I want you to know that you are not alone. Even when things feel tough and when things feel like they aren't going your way, the tools and techniques you will get in this podcast, I know can change everything for you too. So thanks for being here with me today, and let's dive in. Good morning and welcome back to another episode. I'm really excited to have you here with me today, because I have a guest speaker, Tori Milner, and she is a beautiful soul, and she is a menstruation coach. I messed that up. Sorry, Tori, but I will let you take it away because I think this is going to be such a beautiful conversation about abundance, manifesting, and really connecting with your inner self. So before further ado, Tori, please take it away.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation today. I am a menstrual cycle coach, and I work with women around connecting to their menstrual cycle and understanding their menstrual cycle, and specifically during times of transition. So having a new baby or moving country or a big change in your life. So this is really the moments where I'm working with women, and really beautiful moments to be reconnecting to your menstrual cycle. I'm really into connecting to the cyclical energy, to our own inner cyclical energies, and supporting women in understanding those cyclical energies and how they can support us in life.
That's amazing. So for anyone that doesn't really understand their energies, can you explain a little bit more about that for us?
Yeah, totally. So what we learn at school, around the menstrual cycle is that it's it's biology. We have all these fluctuating hormones. We bleed, we ovulate, we bleed again. And so there's a physical cycle of hormones. And this physical cycle also matches up with an energetic cycle. So during the different phases of our cycle, we have 4 phases. The first phase is menstruation, it's our period. Then the second phase is the follicular phase, which is just before ovulation. Then we have ovulation. And then we have our luteal phase, which is just before the next bleed. So we have these 4 phases, and each one has their own energy. So the first phase, our menstrual cycle phase, our bleeding phase, it's really this energy of allowing and receiving and resting, and this winter energy. And of course, it will be different for every woman, but this is kind of the energy that is the most present and the most easily accessible during our menstrual cycle phase. And ovulation will be very summery and fiery and very active energy. So this is what I mean when I say the energy. It's more than just the hormonal fluctuations. It's how our levels of concentration, energy, desire, excitement, all our emotions, how they also fluctuate during the month, during the cycle.
Amazing. So can you tell us more about each of the cyclical phases, like just how they work? I know obviously as women, we understand, like you just said, we have our period, we ovulate, we get our period again. But I think it's really amazing to understand the 4, the 4 phases, but also understanding what your body's doing. Like you said, every body is very different. And I know as I've aged, my period from when I was a teenager to after having children has been so different. But I have started studying energy work and things like that. And I'm absolutely fascinated by this conversation because I've never actually in tuned my energies with my cycles. So I think this is amazing for anyone that is thinking about conceiving a baby or that is in the fertility world. Because if you can harness those energies and really understand what's going on within your body, I think, like, to me, that is like powerful mindset and manifestation and just aligning, to your soul's desires. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, completely, completely. And I think it's really beautiful what you said, that it's so much power, and there is. And I think the first step in reclaiming our power is understanding. It's understanding what is going on within our own body, within our own energy. So like I said before, we have four main cycles, four main phases in our cycle. And so during the first phase, we're bleeding, and our hormones are very flat. It's the very beginning of the cycle, so we don't have many hormones going on, and we're kind of back at the base level. And so, if we're thinking about that on an energetic level, being at the base level of our hormones, also it's like we're back to basics in our lives, like back to the roots, back to like home, just back to the before anything is happening, like who are we at our core and what do we desire at our core? This is really like this beautiful time to, like, when there aren't any distractions, when it's just us in our bleed, when there's no hormones, affecting our emotions, this is like the base level. And also the really beautiful time for receiving and allowing ourselves to receive, because again, it's this very base level, open time where, are we allowing ourselves to receive, to not always have to do and give? Are we allowing ourselves to receive during this time? So that's the first phase, the menstrual cycle phase. And then we move into the second phase, which is the follicular phase. So here our body starts producing more hormones. The eggs are starting to get prepared to ovulate. The body is doing everything necessary to start to ovulate, to create an egg. And this phase is actually the phase in our cycle that can have the most fluctuations and variations in our time. So this is really important to understand on your fertility journey, because we've been told that we ovulate on day 14, but our time before ovulation can fluctuate dramatically depending on our stress, depending on travel, depending on so many factors. And so as our hormones are rising, until they get to the peak of our hormonal, the peak of the hormones where we ovulate, this time can fluctuate a lot. So that's just a side note, like for the fertility journey, just to be really aware that you're not always going to ovulate on day 14. But so the energy of this time is really this energy of patience, and also this energy of hope and faith. So our body has started the journey. It started, climbing up, moving towards ovulation, but we're not in ovulation yet. Our body is like, we're not there yet. Just wait. Just be patient. Just have faith. And it's a really beautiful lesson in letting go and trusting that our body is going to, reach the peak of our hormones to release the egg. So that's our spring energy of the cycle. And before I move on to the second two, maybe you would like to just say anything about those, how you're receiving what I'm saying, and then I'll move on to the next two.
This honestly gave me goosebumps. And I think everything that you're saying is so, I think it's so beautiful. I think it's really, it's so interesting, because when I was on my fertility journeys, I never in my life got so excited for a period. But I knew as soon as my period started, that's when all of your cycle monitoring starts within your clinic. So it's very interesting that you said that, because what they do at least in my clinics, on day 2, that's considered your heavy period day. They don't want day 1 because that could potentially be just a lighter bleed. So day 2, when it's like a full period, that's when you start your cycle monitoring. So they start your blood work. They usually do like an intrauterus ultrasound. they just things like that. So when you're talking about like just in the place of hope and connecting to your desires, that is so it, because you're like, okay, my period's starting, my cycle monitoring starting. And then, as you're monitoring, so the interesting thing is when on my secondary fertility journey, I really tried to get connected with my body. I didn't know anything about this, which I wish I would have. Um, but I remember my day one of my period, it was lighter than normal. And so I was like, okay, do I call them and tell them it's day one, or do I wait till it's day two? But things felt slightly different than my last period. And I was very cautious because I had to drive like 3 hours to my clinic for blood work. And if my satellite clinic, which was an hour away, if they weren't open on Sundays, or if they couldn't take me on a Saturday morning, I had to drive 3 hours to my other clinic. Um, and I just had this very interesting feeling. And I actually ovulated on day 13. And they told me, no, you're like clockwork. You ovulate every day on day 14. So I ended up actually calling on day one and said, I have a full period, even though I didn't. And they're like, okay. And then on day 13, I went in for blood work, which was a day early. I called them and I said, no, like something feels different. I'm just going to come in for blood work. And the cycle monitoring nurse actually said, you know what, don't go home yet. If you feel something, don't go home yet and stay, because if this is ovulation, like you got to start your progesterone injection shots, all of these different things. So I was like, okay. So I sat for another couple of hours in the waiting room, waiting for my blood work results. And she came out and she's like, I don't know what is with you. She's like, I'm really glad you stayed. She's like, you were ovulating today. Like everything needs to start now. She said, if you would have waited till tomorrow, she said, we would have most likely had to cancel your cycle and waited for next one. And I was like, oh my goodness. So it's things like that like I think it's amazing to really be in tune with your body and just feel things and know things. And if your clinic is willing, go down if you think that you might potentially be ovulating, because I know the stress around fertility clinics. I know the stress of having a canceled cycle when your hope is so excited and you're there and you're like, okay, this is it. This could be the one. And they say, oh, you missed a day. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm here every other day for blood work for you to make sure that, lining is going well, making sure everything hormone wise is going the way it's supposed to go. So, I think I encourage people to go in a day early if they think, because if you have to go back the next day, go back the next day, because you don't want your cycle canceled. But I also don't want people to stress either. And I think that's what a lot of people do, is they stress thinking, I have to get this right. It has to be perfect. If it's not perfect, like what if, and it goes into this whole other, energetic cycle of what if and worry. And it adds another level of stress that you don't need during this time. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really beautiful reminder. And I really love that story where, you said that you didn't know all this about your cycle, but yet you still did. There was still part of you, inside that knew that something was slightly different. And you followed that, and that's so beautiful. And just what you were saying at the end about, the details and not getting stressed and not like, everything has to be perfect, like this energy. So one of the questions that I like to ask my clients when I first start working with them, I ask a series of questions around the energy of allowing. And one of them is, are you allowing your desires to manifest without controlling or trying to control every single detail? And this is such an important thing to consider. And of course, in this journey, as you've explained it, there's a lot of controlling the details, and it's very, very necessary because, it is very precise. You do have a very short window of 24, maximum 48 hours when the egg is still viable, or depending on what your journey is. And so you do need to control the details, but energetically, can you just take a breath, and can you just relax a little bit? and understand that it's a co-creation, that yes, we're trying to control the details where necessary, and can we just take a step back when there are certain things that we don't need to control? Yeah, can we play with that balance really?
Yeah, I think that is it's incredible because I think of my very last journey when, I was at almost at the point of giving up. And I did this thing that I call surrender. Like I literally just I got down on my knees. I think I really had tears like running down from my face. And I was like, okay, universe, I'm allowing. Just I'm surrendering to you. Tell me what to do and I'll do it and I won't question. And like my second episode, I go into detail about like surrendering in my journey. And after my egg retrieval, like my first implantation ended up resulted in my son, whereas it didn't work out that time um for my twins. But the whole thing is it was just that moment of I kept this mindset going where I said to myself, I'm doing everything that I need to do physically for medication wise, but whenever something shows up, dates might not be aligning or other things might not. I'm just in this phase of trusting that this is working out, that something, the universe, God, spirit, creator is guiding me. And I will just do what I need to do necessary and keep myself not necessarily zen, but just keep myself in a very calm state. And I share how there was so many synchronicities that started happening once I started surrendering. And yes, things came up because my husband's a caterer and he had all of these events booked on the time that I was supposed to have my egg retrieval. He had to have a sperm retrieval. We had all these different things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's got event after event. He needs at least 2 days to heal after his procedure before he can keep, going back and doing these crazy events. But I just kept saying, universe, you're guiding me. Universe, you're guiding me. And yes, there was stress, but I was like, I can't hold this stress in my body. And, it ultimately ended up I had my baby after my second egg retrieval. There was lots of things before that, but it was just that moment of saying surrender, being in this calm state. And again, like the mindset of just saying, you know what? I will physically do everything that I have to do medication wise and just, keeping myself as calm as possible. But I really harnessed the belief that the universe was going to guide me and that this was going to work out. And it did. And I don't believe in coincidences. I know that that was a huge big part that I did. And, having this conversation with you, I think, my gosh, if you were around in 2014, things probably or could have been different, but I also believe everything works out exactly the way it's supposed to. So
Good, good.
yeah, I'm loving this conversation. So we'll get back to you. You can keep over.
No, I really love everything you've said around surrender, and I totally agree. And it's such an important component in, the fertility journey, in any journey of abundance and manifestation. And the thing that really does support me in surrender is understanding the menstrual cycle and is tuning into these different energies because it really gives me a framework. So it can be really beautiful to, like you said about you're doing everything you need physically, you're doing all the medications, you have that framework, and then the rest you can surrender to. And I think that's really supportive in our journey, is really having a framework that we can lean on, having this inner understanding of actually what's going on, and knowing that we have, a certain level of control over certain things within this framework. And then outside of the framework, this is where we surrender. And I really love playing with these two energies of like the frame and the loosely surrendering. So yeah, I just wanted to say that about that. But I will continue now with the other two phases of the cycle. So I spoke about the the bleed, and then the follicular phase, which is the second phase, and then we have ovulation, which is obviously super important in any fertility journey. And also in our life in general, it's a very, very strong and powerful energy. And so we have this very strong peak, strong rise of hormones during our cycle, and then when we have the highest level of estrogen, then our progesterone kicks in once we've ovulated. So there's this switch between the estrogen and the progesterone during ovulation. We'll ovulate, and then as soon as we've ovulated, the progesterone kicks in. And you've mentioned that you had progesterone, you needed to take progesterone. So depending on each person's fertility journey, it will be around different hormones. But this is the natural way that it works. We have the very strong high rise in estrogen. Then we ovulate, the egg is released, thanks to a whole other system of hormones as well that all come in together. And then once the egg is released, we have the progesterone. And so it's a very, very quick change, which is really interesting in ovulation because we get to this like very strong rise, very high energy. Our body is also producing lots of fluids, ready for the body to naturally conceive, because our body's always working in a way that we can naturally conceive. So it's doing everything necessary. Our cervix opens. So there's a lot of opening and flowing because our fluids are very, very flowing, very, very watery. Our cervix opens so that the sperm can swim up. And so it's very flowing, very open, and very, very fiery and creative. And so this is a really beautiful energy to tap into in any journey, in any, in your fertility journey, in your journey towards any type of abundance, because it really is this like opening of the sunflower. It's really this very strong, summery, creative energy that we can channel towards what we desire. So if we're desiring a baby, then to really, at this peak, at this high level, right in the summer of ovulation, to really set the intention, to really have that as your grounding intention that this is what I desire. I desire a baby, or I desire a family, or I desire, financial abundance. I desire a relationship. It can be any desire, but to really have it as this intention when you have this high level of summer energy, because it's so powerful. We're literally releasing pheromones. We're releasing things from us. So we're magnetic during this time. So everything that we're letting out of us, everything that we're releasing, everything that all our intentions we're putting out there are magnetic. So it's such a juicy and beautiful and exciting time.
Awesome. That's so good.
Yeah. And then so after ovulation, we move very, very quickly into the luteal phase, which is the time after ovulation. So the egg actually only lasts about 24 to 48 hours after it's been released. Usually about 24 hours. In some cases, it will be 48. And then it dies. And then we have a set amount of days. So this is really also important to understand. So like I said before about the time between like the first phase in our cycle can vary very dramatically. It can be more, it can be less days. The time after ovulation until our next period will always be the same amount of days. Because we're not affected anymore by any outside factors. It's all what's happening within us. So it will be between 9 to 16 days, and each woman's amount of days will be different. But each woman will have the same amount of days in between their ovulation and their next period every single cycle. So if you know when you're ovulating, if you know once you've ovulated, then you can know when your next period is going to be. And maybe there will be a day or two difference, but it is very, very consistent. I've been tracking my cycle for 6 years now, and I think it changed very slightly this last year because I've been working even more with my hormones in a very natural way. But it was always 11 days. For 5 years, it was 11 days, and now I've managed to make it a bit longer, and it's about 13, 14 days. But that time is always the same, which can be really a great knowledge to have, because then you know when your next period is going to be. And then you can start preparing Obviously, if you're in your fertility journey, it's really important to know when your period is going to start so you can have a really good idea of when that's going to be. And energetically, it's really a time for gratitude and to go inwards. And this can be really, it's usually a time when most women struggle, is this last week before your next period. You know, it's what we associate with PMS. It's what we associate with, women's moodiness. And so it's a time when a lot of women struggle, and it's really a time to go inwards. It's really a time to reflect on this last month and everything that happened. It's also time for forgiveness. And I guess this is very important in a fertility journey, if it hasn't worked out, to really bring compassionate forgiveness to yourself and to anyone else you're feeling angry with, and gratitude. So it's a lot of forgiveness, a lot of gratitude, and a lot of like meditation and going inwards and just reflecting on what's present at the moment within, so that we can process all these things before our next period. So we give ourselves time to really process them. And then when we have our next bleed, we start again. So each phase is really important to really tune into what each phase has to offer. And yeah, so those are the 4 phases.
I think I feel like my only words when I do a podcast is that's amazing. This is incredible and it's beautiful. And honestly, because I love having candid conversations with people when it comes to mindset, manifestation, it comes to fertility, it comes to, understanding your cycle and understanding energies. And I think this is such an amazing message that, for anyone that's on the fertility journey right now, if you stop focusing on your cycle and focus on, the energetic phase part of it, I think it allows for so much more beauty to come in and so much more joy to come in. Because when you talk about the luteal phase and gratitude, and I think for a lot of women that are on the fertility journey, it is a place either for gratitude or it's a place of sheer worry. Like, okay, did the baby stick? Did the embryo stick? Am I pregnant? I can't do this. I can't do that because, like I'm housing this embryo for the next 2 weeks before my blood work starts or my period starts. And, it can be a very stressful time. Excuse me. And I know my very last round, when we did my implantation for my twins, that's when I just started learning about gratitude. And I was so, so, so grateful that, I had this opportunity, that I was here, and I stayed so focused on becoming a mom and that I was going to have twins. And then it was a place of gratitude. And, when I went after all of my journeys were done, I learned about this technique of blessing and releasing, and it was one of my all-time favorite things of doing, because I allowed my body. I went through phases where I cursed my body. I was like, what the heck is wrong with me? Why is this not working? According to science, I'm doing all the right things. I'm ovulating perfectly. I did some medicated cycles. I did some natural cycles. And for some reason, these embryos weren't sticking. And I was really hard on myself. There was other factors that were going on too. I was afraid I was letting my husband down. I was afraid I was letting down my stepdaughters. There was just so much that I was holding on. And, I went back and I spent time with each and every cycle that I had, and I blessed and released it by saying, you know what, it's not, even when science is perfect, that does not mean that the embryo wasn't. It does not mean that there's a reason it did not stick. Like, our bodies are beautiful and they know so much more than we do. And I even went to the point of saying, you know what? And I had to do what I had to do. It's going to be different for every other person. But it was very much a state for me of just saying, you know what? These embryos, I flipped the perspective. At least I got to carry them and love them for those 2 weeks. No, I never got to meet them. Maybe in my afterlife I can meet them. But right now, my body did what it had to do. And maybe there was something that my body knew that I didn't know, that these embryos just weren't meant to stick or weren't meant to stay. And I just allowed myself to hold space, that I got to bring all my embryos home. And, I just got to be with them. I got to love them, that they knew nothing but love while they were there. And, I still have 3 beautiful children through IVF, and I am beyond grateful for that. But I think it's also important that, yes, like you hold the gratitude and don't go into the place of stress, because, my first 3 implantations before my twins, before I understood gratitude, I was in a place of like, okay, I'm pregnant. It was exciting, but it was also filled with so much fear of like, well, what if this doesn't work? And, like, what if I'm not meant to have babies? What if I'm spending all this money for, just hope? And that's all it turns out to be. And when I started learning about gratitude, it was very much that phase of like, you know what? I get to be here. I get to house these embryos right now. I get to be with them, love them, and whatever is will be. But know that the end goal is I want to be a mom and I will be a mom. And I kept saying that over and over. Let go of the time frame and just know it is going to happen. But every time I try and control something, the control is what's actually putting that stress on my body. And, that implantation, we got pregnant with boy-girl twins. And, I did the same thing for, when we geared up for our second egg retrieval, because before that we had, again, 3 other implantations, a failed miscarriage, all those things. And like I said, I got to the point of surrender, and I was like, bring in this calm, bring in this gratitude, bring in this everything. And like I mentioned before, again, I did the blessing releasing. I didn't do it until, a couple years later. I think my son was 1 when I really started understanding blessing and releasing. But I held that space for myself. I really gave myself, I went to every single cycle, every single, like on my fertility journey, and I blessed and released it. And I want all the listeners to understand that, no matter where you are on your journey, whether you're just starting to try and conceive naturally and you're getting excited and you're listening to all the things, mindset manifestation, or cycle monitoring and all of that, no matter where you are, love your body, bless your body. Your body is this most miraculous thing, that it can grow human life, that it can, it can feed your children, it can do everything and anything. And it can also allow your body to take on these medications to help you. But bless and release the idea of your body not being enough, or that you're not worthy, or whatever feelings come up. And just know that, just be in these phases of love and gratitude and surrender, that, these are working out the way it's supposed to. And I know that's hard to hear for a lot of people. I know those were some things hard to hear for me after having multiple failed, transfers and having a miscarriage and having all of these things. When people said like everything happens in its right divine time, I'm thinking, stop telling me that. That's the rudest thing you could say to me. But it really did come to be true. Everything did happen in its right divine time. I had to let go of the control and of these things and focus on the energy of love and gratitude, and focusing on your desires and, just allowing versus control, control, control. And I think if you can harness a belief that everything is going to work out for you, you're going to be in a far more relaxed and, calm state, versus that like, okay, I hope this is working. This is a lot of money, that you feel yourself tensing. But yeah, just blessing and releasing where you are on this journey, and allow your body to feel that love again, and know that it's not your body. You didn't do anything wrong. Because the truth is science. It's a beautiful thing. It's an amazing thing, but science is not perfect. So when you're in, the fertility world, every doctor, it is a guessing game on whether it's medical factors or you fall in the unknown category, because you both seem to, both partners in the situation seem to be having great working parts. It's just not working. It's just that thing of just allow your body to know that it knows what it's doing, and that, just bring it back to love. And I really love this conversation that I'm having with you of like, I'm so excited for my next period to start in the sense of just really looking at the energetic point of it, and how, I can be in the point of manifesting. I can be in the point of, gratitude. I can be in the point of like, I'm this fiery lotus flower ready to just, take on, you know, my desires and take on actions to get me closer to my dreams. And then just be in that point of gratitude and everything else. I think I'm excited to really pull that in on such a different level. And I think it's amazing for listeners to hear that, there is a whole energy behind, instead of, we go through the day-to-day life, at least I can contest for myself. When, you get your period, then you have cramps or you're tired, depending on your iron levels and things like that. And then you're just like, oh, I hate my period. It's just gross. Ugh. And, you go and then you're like, okay, now I'm ovulating. And, you're just like, great. But when you can focus it on the energy, it's such a different level of loving your body, a different level of understanding how amazing our body is, that we go through these cycles and we can house a baby, or, we can really hone in on whatever we wanted to, like our abundance, our manifestation, our desires. And we can do that with our cycle, instead of it's this thing that we have to go through every month, that, when you're out of the phase of wanting to have children, you think like, I still have to have this horrible, crappy period. I've had my kids. Or, for anyone that decides kids aren't for them, they want to spend their life traveling, or just, be the best aunt or uncle or whatever. You have this thing that it's just this monthly thing, which I think is such a different way of looking at it now, which I think this is so incredible. And I think it's exciting, instead of this, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. It's such a common thing for so many women to really not like their cycle. And like you said, really just like dealing with it and not enjoying it. And I have to say, when I wait for my period, like what you just said, now you can't wait. Like the 2 days where I'm like properly bleeding are my favorite in my whole cycle, because I've actually learned to really, really allow myself to rest. So I'm very lucky in that I can create my own schedule as an entrepreneur. And so I am able to really write off my calendar for 2 days while I'm bleeding, and really take it as a self-care day and time for me to just relax. And I think, yeah, when you really understand the different components of the cycle, the different energies that are present, for me, it's really like a portal into these energies. The cycle, and I always tell this because I also work with women who are after menopause, who are no longer cyclical, or even women who are pregnant, who are like, well, I don't have my monthly cycle. What about my energy? And I always say the menstrual cycle doesn't create these energies, but what it does, it gives us a really focused access and a really clear portal into connecting with these energies. So these energies are so much more present and alive and accessible during these phases of our cycle, which is why I really support women in connecting to the different energies during the different cycle. But if you're currently pregnant and you're like, well, what about my fiery, summery energy? What's that? And you can still definitely connect to that. And just like we have the monthly cycle with our menstrual cycle, we also have the same cyclical energies during our pregnancy journey. And so I'm currently working with a postpartum mother's mentor, and she's really talking about the winter, that postpartum is really like our bleed. It's really like the winter of the pregnancy journey. And so we can use the same energy, the same, reflections. Okay, like what am I focusing on during this postpartum time? Like, am I allowing myself to rest and really receive the blessings? I've just given birth. So really noticing these cycles and this energy, it's in our whole life. And we have it within us, every cycle, to connect to it. But we can connect to it on the yearly cycle of the seasons, the cycle of the moon. Like, there's so many ways to connect to these, and we just have this amazing portal within to support us in connecting to them. It's really our inner wisdom. That's like the bottom line for me. It's our inner power and our inner wisdom that we have like a direct connection to the source of it.
I think, again, goosebumps. I think this is amazing, because I think for me, now that I'm out of the baby phase, I know that I'm done having children, and I'm really understanding energy and trying to connect with spirit more. And I think it's amazing, because I think now my period does not serve me as a purpose, in the sense of, I'm monitoring it because I'm trying to create life. I'm no longer trying to create life, but I get to get excited about it again. And I think for, anyone that does, new motherhood is such a beautiful thing, but it can also be a place where, you're dealing with tiredness and things like that. And you will hear every advice under the sun from everyone that's had a baby of what works for them, what works, and my advice to all the moms, the brand new moms out there: listen to you. You know what is best for you. You know what is best for your baby, but do take time to rest. Rest when baby sleeps if you can. But even connecting to that energy of, I've had my baby. I can be in this place of gratitude. I can think of all the fun things that I get to do with baby as they go through the months, and as they age and they develop new, motor skills and exciting things. And focus on the gratitude. Don't focus on tiredness. Because I very side note, I watched this beautiful little quick, I don't know if it was a TikTok or a Facebook reel or something, but it was this mom. Her daughter just turned 35, and she said she woke up really emotional, and she just went back through all the photos, and she said, what I wouldn't give to go back and just feel that, the soft baby cheek, or hear the baby coos. And she said, I never took time. I was always going after the next thing, a promotion or something, so I could make sure that my kids could have the best sports, or the best school, or the best clothes. And she said, now that my daughter's 35 and I get to have lunch with her today, she goes, I miss the birthday parties. I miss the things. And she said, every parent tells you, oh, time flies. And she goes, it does fly. She said, but make sure you find time for gratitude. And I was like bawling through this whole little episode, because I thought it's so true. And if you can connect to gratitude before all of this, you'll find it so much easier to come through your cycle. You'll find it easier to come through life. And it really does flip the perspective. Instead of going through the motions of life, like, I got to wake up, I got to, take this medication, I have this doctor's appointment. Or if you're in the baby phase, like feed baby, laundry, this, we get so in the mundane of doing just things that we don't take time to be present. And I like that you can connect this with your cycle. Even, if you are breastfeeding, you don't necessarily get your period right away after having a baby. So you can still have these cycles, but focus on the energy, and focus on, like, I get to manifest, I get to, all the beautiful things that we've just talked about. I think this is such a fun conversation, and I'm so glad that we got to have this and that we've been connected. I think this is such an amazing thing. So is there anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, just to that last piece that you were saying, about how bringing in the gratitude before, you get to the end while in the present moment. And I think just it's really beautiful to remember that we are always in constant transition. And it's like that we're always transitioning. We're transitioning ourselves, and our baby is also always transitioning. And so we're in this constant change, this constant transition, and nothing is going to be the same ever. We're always evolving. And so just to remember that and remember like, wow, yeah, everything is changing all the time. So this is the only time that I can be grateful for this moment. This is the present. This is now, because in 2 seconds, it will be something else. And, again, the menstrual cycle is a really beautiful reminder that we are always transitioning, that, throughout the month, or looking out and seeing the seasons, just remembering that we're always transitioning. And it's beautiful because we get to grow and develop and evolve. And there is going to be some mourning and grieving of past identities, of how things were in the past. And I think it's really important, like what you were saying, like continuously bringing the gratitude back, because that will just aid and support us so much in this transition journey throughout our life. So I think it's really beautiful.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. I feel like a kid in a candy store right now. I love this conversation, and I am so excited to really like focus on these phases and be excited again. Because I can, someone like myself who has really studied mindset and manifestation, really come to understand the universal laws. I still call myself a life student, because we are always evolving. We are always growing. And the more I immerse myself with knowledge, the more excited I get about things. But the truth is there is some days that, here in Ontario, it's March break. My kids are home. And I'm in my mom's house right now, and my husband's watching the kids because I have a lot of stuff that I have to get done. And just, having kids in the background is triggering for some people who are on their journey. So I wanted a very quiet environment, but every phase looks very different. And, I was just thinking about sometimes when life is really busy, we still go back to, okay, here's my checklist. I got to get this done today. I got to get this done today. And it's a reminder to be present. It's a reminder to be present in every stage and phase, whether it's, your kids are home for a week from school, or you're holding a newborn baby, or you now have a toddler, or you have, adults. My oldest stepdaughter is in her second year of university. She's 20. So we have a wide, range of ages in our household. And it's a good reminder to just, even life in general, embrace every phase, embrace every stage, and just, I'm excited about harnessing the energies and really just focusing on gratitude again, and remembering to bring all of this present. Because I think the more we bring in gratitude, and the more that we can focus on something other than what it is. So instead of looking at just a period as a period, but looking at it as an energetic thing, and that we can, do all of these beautiful things instead of, what society tells us. Oh, we have our period. We have this. We're going to deal with PMS. We're going to have this. It's just, again, it's like flipping that perspective. It's looking at something differently, but in such a beautiful way, in such a more natural, organic way than, it's here, it's this right now, here, this. And I think it just allows so much more beauty into our lives, and really connect. Like, women's bodies are this like beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think I can, again, contest for myself. I've taken that for granted, that, when I feel like as soon as when I was in high school, like when you're just like, oh, I hate having my period. It's awful. Like, I know I'm not trying to have a baby right now, so it's not serving me a purpose. And I used to think, why can't we just get our periods when we just want to have, when we're in that family stage where we want to grow a family, and then it just stops? Wouldn't that be amazing? And, now I can look at it like, no matter what, it's this beautiful transition that I get to always remind myself of, rest and relax, then, go to, the fiery stage of like, okay, we're prepping to have this baby, and, like focusing on your desires or focusing on whatever it is. If you're out of the baby stage or you're not quite in the baby stage yet. Um,
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important piece to remember that, yes, of course, our cycle is first and foremost to create a baby, but it's actually about the fertile and creative energy. So we're choosing to channel that into creating a baby, and we can also choose to channel that into any other creation in our lives, whether we want to create a business, whether we want to create a relationship. We can channel our energy when we understand and tune into our energy, we can channel it into anything we desire. So even after you've finished having babies, or if you never want to have babies, there's still so much creative and fertile potential within that you can, we are creative beings by nature. Women are creative beings by nature. And yeah, just really embracing that and stepping into that and allowing it to support you in every aspect of your life.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, thank you for this conversation. I think it's so incredible for anyone listening to understand about our cycles. And I think it's amazing that this is like you get to be a coach, and that you get to coach people through this. So listeners, on the podcast notes, I will have all the links to Tori. So if you like to connect with her, how you can connect with her or reach out to her, because I think this is such a beautiful thing. Just, understanding and always being able to flip the perspective on something that it's not happening to you. You have control over this, and you can turn it into this beautiful thing instead of just something. And like I said, I'm honestly very excited for my period to start again, so I can really focus on this energy phase and really be like, wow. Because my mind is literally like going a mile a minute right now. I'm thinking of all the things that I want to manifest. I'm thinking of all the things that would be so amazing. And I'm also just at a phase right now where I love focusing on relationships and really coming into tune with people around me and what they're going through, and protecting my energy, but also being able to send them love at a distance as well. And my mind is just like swirling of how I can harness the different phases of my cycle and be in those phases and give love and, do different things as well. And for myself, for people around me. And I'm just so excited. This is such a fascinating conversation.
So exciting. Oh, I'm very grateful to you for welcoming me. And it's been such fun speaking to you about all of this. And I just love it after a conversation when, the woman I'm speaking to is saying exactly what you're saying. Like, I can't wait for my period. Like, I'm like, okay, my job here is done. So yeah, I'm very excited, and very grateful to you.
Good. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. Um, I'm literally leaving like on cloud nine with the biggest smile on my face, because I think this is just such a fun conversation, and I think it's so empowering for women to really harness their cycle on such a different level and know that, we are creative beings. And I really do like how you said we are always transitioning. I've never looked at it like that. Um, and I think that's so important, because our bodies are always transitioning for the next either menstrual cycle or, energetic cycle. So we're always kind of in that state of flowing and going. And, if you can connect and flip it, I think that's it's so empowering. It's so exciting. And I think that in itself, in a whole, is, understanding your cycle, bringing it back to fertility. You can plan, your work schedule around certain things. If you know that approximately around this time, this could happen. Um, I encourage listeners to have an open conversation with their boss if that is a comfortable place for them, just to let them know that you might need a bit more of a flexible schedule over the next little while, and you'd be amazed of some of the support you will get. I know I did that with my boss, and he was very, very understanding. And I was forever grateful that he gave me the flexibility. If I was 5 minutes late for work because of traffic or something, I could stay 5 minutes later. Or if I had to go to an appointment, I would just switch my lunch break around. Like my appointment would be on my lunch break. But the whole point is just if you focus on what you want, the universe can bring it to you. And this is just another way of the universe or, energy working for you, and just understanding your cycles and just bringing in that love, that joy, that abundance, that gratitude, and really connecting with our desires. Because I truly believe our desires are very unique to us. And, they're called to us for a reason, that we are meant to have the things that we desire. So if we're desiring them, we are meant to have them. We just need to connect with our inner self. And this is such a beautiful way to connect with your inner self as well. So again, thank you so much for being here with me today. Again, listeners, look at the podcast notes for all the links to Tori if you'd like to connect with her. And I hope you have such a beautiful, amazing, amazing day.
If you found this helpful or know anyone that needs to hear this, please share. And don't forget to leave a review and subscribe. In love and gratitude, Jessica.